Hey, listener. We wanted to give a shout out to one of our former guests and friends of the pod, John Stutzman. John is the current director of Parks and Recreation for Columbia Heights, Minnesota, and a longtime friend. He donated to our recent scholarship fund we did for young professionals going to this year's NRPA conference in Philly. If you're an individual, an agency, or a vendor and want to contribute to our scholarship program, please go to recklesspod.com and click on our store page. From there, you'll see an opportunity to donate any amount you are comfortable with. 100% of the proceeds in this donation go to scholarships or professional development for Parks and Rec professionals. Now on to the show.
Welcome to Season 6 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three professional friends, if you know, from around the country, bringing you a surprise guest each episode. This project has made an impact, educates others, and continues to support a growing community. Thank you for being part of it. This is RecLess.
Nice. Got a matching colored shirt as
Yeah,
our Park
y'all
and Rec
match.
kid.
Me and Jay match. You and our guest match. Awesome. What's up,
Your
fellas?
screen too, but me and Shane are on the top of my screen, and you guys are on the bottom of my
So
screen.
the way it does on mine is the greens are on the left and the whites are on the right.
Well, if we're all sharing, mine are all at the top, and it's every other. Green,
Nice.
white shirt, green, white
I
shirt.
love it.
This is real good conversation.
You ready to roll? Welcome to RecLess, everybody. My name's Shane. I got my good buddies, Tom and Jay here. What's up, Tom?
Hey, Shane, it's always exciting when you're the host, It's just I knew you're gonna go buddies, but I can't not smirk when you say it after all that we've gone through with that
We've gone
topic.
through, that's for sure. Jay, what about you?
I'm good. I never know what's going to happen when you're hosting.
I haven't messed this up yet.
It's
I mean,
only been
we're-
like 30 seconds.
30 seconds in. Listen, I've messed up 30 seconds in before, so this is a crowning achievement for me. I've got a guest. You can see him. Our listeners can't. Parks and Rec kid, and they went Avatar. So, I think if they were talking and they're not supposed to be talking or moving around, I think it would be moving with them. Just
My kids
It just blinked.
yes, the dog just blinked. My kids FaceTime their grandparents just to do this to their own faces. They don't even talk to them.
yeah.
They just want to see their face turn into a shark or
There
whatever
was
it is.
during COVID, there was a lawyer who had let his daughter use his device, and then he was logging on, and he logged on as a cat. I don't know if you ever saw that. And he's telling the judge, I'm not really a cat. It's hilarious. He couldn't figure out how to get the avatar off. Maybe Hannah will find that and link that to this episode. But fellas, I'm excited. Good guest. I'm also excited about our question because for me, it's relevant, very topical in the moment, because I want to hear your favorite sporting event. Maybe any type of event, but I'm thinking sporting event. And I know it could be the Super Bowl if the Bills are playing in it, but if the Bills aren't playing in it, what do you think, right? Same thing for the Patriots. But for me, and I'll give y'all a chance to think about it, I love the World Cup. I love it because even though there's Champions League and there's Premier League, and I love Tottenham and I love watching them play, this almost has that World Baseball Classic feel of, you've got a whole Dominican team versus a whole Puerto Rican team or an American team. But what's even more different about it than even like the World Baseball Classic is most of the baseball players are Major League Baseball players. This is people all over the country. You'll have a Major League Soccer striker with someone that has played for Tottenham, which is someone that's playing in Qatar, and that's one team. Those are guys that are playing for the same club or a country. They play on different clubs throughout the year, but they all come together. They don't get a lot of money. This is really for the love of the game, and I think you see it throughout. It's almost like the Olympics in some ways, that people get excited and start rooting. Jay may even root for men's soccer this 5 weeks, even when he wouldn't care about soccer any other time. But it's one of those things that you start to see some national pride with it. And what's also funny is you start to see you'll find out someone's dad's Irish, so then they also root for Ireland or whatever, which is always kind of interesting. So I've always loved World Cup. I think it was probably my quote unquote gateway drug playing soccer was something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed playing soccer more than I liked playing football, powerlifting. It was my favorite sport. But watching World Cup soccer got me into watching ultimately Premier League soccer and really being the fanatical I am about it. So I love the World Cup. It's my favorite type of sporting event. I would never go, still not interested in attending, but I do. I'm watching every game. I've watched the first 2 games so far. I've got both games today DVR'd. I'm ready for all 3 tomorrow. I'm going to watch every single game I can. So, Tom or Jay, if y'all have one, what's your favorite event, sporting event, Super Bowl, Olympics, whatever?
Let me go, Jay, and let me also offend some people.
Oh boy.
And that's not usually my approach.
That's right.
And this is nothing against soccer. It's a little bit against the Olympics. I love the Olympics. Listen, I love it all. I love sports and these events. But the World Baseball Classic, World Cup, you just said it before. There's just a lot of people in this country who were born and raised here who are going to be going to these games wearing an England jersey, who are going to be going to these games. So to each his own.
Yep.
But I also feel that at least in our country, the pride is probably not the same as it is for and I can't speak for those other countries, but I highly doubt there's people from other countries when the Olympics are there wearing USA jerseys like there are Americans wearing tons of other jerseys for the World Cup. So there's that piece. The other piece that I criticized, the World Baseball Classic recently, there was Cal Raleigh, Seattle Mariners catcher, just set the home run record for catchers last year. He was playing for Team USA. They were playing against Randy Arozarena, his Seattle Mariners teammate. And I forget which team he was on, but Arozarena went up to the plate, went up to dap Cal Raleigh, just put his fist down, and Cal Raleigh looked up at him and said, "No, I'm good." It was a huge story. And I just thought it was a huge black eye for Team USA, but also just sportsmanship in general. It's just there's something about it I get it. It's your country, but come on. You're playing baseball with these people on the same team for 162 games, and you can't give the guy a fist pump when he goes to the plate.
There's that famous Kobe Bryant thing where he runs through Pau Gasol, right?
That was what I thought of.
Yep,
I was going to say the same thing, and that clip is incredible.
Yep.
And I absolutely love Kobe Bryant. His mentality is unlike any other.
And all those USA players got behind them wanting to win that game after. Like when you hear them, they were like, "Oh, you're not going to do that to Pau Gasol." Ran right through him, and then they were like, "Oh, we're fixing to run this freaking table," and they did. So
the interviews with Chris Bosh and Blaine and others that were like absolutely shocked. It was amazing.
I think you can be competitive without having to run through someone. Is all I'm saying, because for whatever reason, I mean, you got to do that during the sport anyway. I guess maybe not in that situation, but you can be competitive and still be a sportsman about it.
I get what you're saying. So Champions League is the highest league. It's where everyone's European teams go to play. And the last 2 teams were Arsenal, who I hate, and PSG. And Arsenal, it had gone to extra time free kicks, and the Arsenal defender kicked it over the goal, and they ended up losing because of it. And almost the first person that comforted him was his teammate in this World Cup, but that's actually plays for PSG. So he came over, and I think we've seen that. You'll see a kid in Little League strike out a buddy, and they immediately embrace. And I get what you're saying. I like those moments too, but
Yeah. So, all right, now that I've offended people, and undoubtedly people that disagree with me, let me just give my short version, because it is a short version. Hands down, it's the Super Bowl for me.
No matter who's playing.
No matter who's playing. But part of it is because the Patriots have made the Super Bowl maybe 10 times, or Brady 10 times in the last 25 years. So that's been extra enjoyable. But what I really appreciated about the Super Bowl and football, and some people will say this is football's downside, is that, and the World Cup's similar to this as well, but because you have kind of a little season, the pool play and all that's almost your season, and then you have the elimination. What I really appreciate about the NFL, it's one game. You got to bring it. Again, a lot of individuals will criticize that and say, well, the best of 7 series, it gives those teams that have a bad night a chance. But I think that's what makes football special. That's what makes the Super Bowl special. If you don't perform and you don't prepare in the 2 weeks that you have to play that other team, Sorry, and yes, some of the games are close. Sorry to bring that up, Jay. You might prepare just good enough and miss a field goal wide. Was it right or left?
He didn't have to, Jay. He didn't have to bring it up.
I know. So I get it, because those fans who lose with a chip shot field goal that just happened to miss, they're going to say, oh, if we had another chance, we were prepared. We should have won that game. But in addition to the one game setting or format, it's also just a really, really fun event and day. They make a whole day of it. And for people in this country, I assume, who do enjoy the Super Bowl, regardless of what team's in the Super Bowl, you get together with family, friends, whoever that may be. You make great food. Obviously, that's for the people not going the game, which is the majority of people. So I do love the fact that one game. I mean, football itself, every Sunday is an event, it seems. Now, don't get me wrong. I love a game 7. Like last year's World Series, game 7 was one of the best baseball games I've ever watched. Getting to a game 7 is incredible, but it's just a little different than the Super Bowl.
So I'm going to go another different sport. We got 3 different sports that are going to be covered on this. And
marathon running.
How did you know?
The Boston Marathon. They do the Patriots Day. Whatever.
Jay's out there with the water.
Sport of all time. I know I've talked about it earlier this year. I love March Madness. I think there's nothing like it, just from the sake of, there's obviously, who's playing, how many teams are going to be in it, and there's seeding, and the seeding kind of what makes it more fun is because you see these like, oh man, a 16's only lost to a 1 once ever, and it was never done up until 2-3 years ago. So no one ever thought they had a chance. Well, now you've seen it, not necessarily happen more than once, but there's been some close games, the 15-2 matchup, all these different matchups, and it's just like, and then when you get a 12 seed that makes it to the Final Four or the Elite Eight, it's just all this talk, and the excitement that goes around it just keeps building and building. And you see these smaller schools that, no one's ever heard of. It's like, you think about the Wichitas, the James Madisons, there's these teams that
that George Mason team that one year.
But like outside of that community where they live, like most people would probably have to look up a map or Google, like, where is that school located? So I think that's fun. I love that. I love basketball. There's also probably no other sport that has so many, like, quote unquote buzzer beaters. It's just like you have some walk-off home runs in baseball, but it's truly like you kind of anticipate it because someone's up to bat, they got a chance, where like a buzzer beater, like it happens so fast. You don't know the play. All these different things can go wrong or, in some cases go right. They'll go down in history. You talk about the Christian Laettner shot. You talk about, UNC losing a few years ago at the buzzer, like
the Valparaiso shot. I can't think of that. Drew, something like the Valparaiso kid years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love March Madness for so many reasons. So that's, the first thing that came to mind when you asked this question would be definitely my answer.
Okay. Well,
I don't know that I watched one soccer game this whole 5 weeks, man. I'm
Not
sorry.
even if the United States are on. You're like, no, I should.
I'll honestly, like, I love playoff basketball. I've been watching every Knicks Spurs game, and
I haven't watched 1 minute.
I'm like, can't wait for tomorrow night. I've been loving the basketball playoffs, and not just the finals, but even up until the finals. But these final games have been unbelievable. So I can't wait for Game 5 tomorrow.
People have been living in this area, obviously, because Austin's right next to San Antonio, living and dying with that series. But I just come in and hear about it afterwards.
Not that we need to talk more about it, but San Antonio's been there before, quite often. Different
not
cast
this
of
team,
characters.
though. Yeah.
Different cast of characters. New York, on the other hand, have you seen, if anything, first of all, that game the other night, I didn't get a chance to watch that comeback, but I read all about it and saw the highlights. Phenomenal. I wish I got a chance to see that. But what's really interesting to me, because of the market, New York, have you seen all the celebrities that are just courtside? I mean, this is a big deal. The New York Knicks, it's as big as it gets, because the Knicks, when's the last time, what is it, in the 90s maybe, that they were?
They were in it in 99.
Yeah.
They have not won it since the 70s.
Yeah, big deal.
Let's get to the guest. So I'm excited for my guest. You can see they're a Parks and Rec kid. They grew up with a dad that had a therapeutic rec degree and served on the local parks board of their hometown in Union City. He didn't go that path. He went political science degree from University of Arizona and did some coursework in law at University of San Diego. Started working as a political and policy consultant for a number of firms before ultimately working at an architectural firm in the Austin area. They presented at multiple state and national conferences. They're an advisory board member to the Hispanic Professional Parks and Rec group. They currently serve as the board president for the Barton Springs Conservancy, formerly vice chair of the Austin Parks and Rec board, former president of the Tree Folks, which is a Central Texas tree group, and the former fund development chair for the Austin Parks Foundation. Lots of service, this group.
And came
Most
from
important,
the East Coast, I believe.
Well, we'll find out. Most importantly, they're currently working on my rec center. And for the first time, they're going to hear themselves, I believe, introduced as this. They are the new executive director of the Texas Recreation Park Society. Our guest, Rich DePalma.
I'm here, but I'm moving, but I'm still an avatar.
Hey.
How y'all doing? Appreciate it.
If you would have kept it in that format, that would have been pretty incredible.
You know what? If anybody's going to do that, it would definitely be me to do that. But I appreciate being here. And yeah, you're like, who in the hell is Rich DePalma?
Welcome, Rich. Congrats on the new gig.
I appreciate it, Tom. And it's good to be on this with y'all. I feel like I'm celebrities because I say long-time listener, first-time guest. And so I appreciate being here. I have a lot of friends who got to participate and being part of it. And, so like shout out to Jeff Achi and then Chris Nunes in Court and Tony Murphy over up in Colleen and Stacy and Naya and Edwin and who else has been on there?
You're basically saying it's about damn time we got you on. Is that what you're saying?
No. They're all great. They're fantastic and they deserve to be here. And the rest of everybody's like, who is this guy? But there is a little bit of story because at the end of the day, what we do care about, right? We're all the park and rec professionals is how do we uplift communities and why it's important and how does that mission and how does that work actually touch lives? And I think I'm a big example of how that touches lives. But we can talk about it a little bit later. And to answer the question, of course, it's March Madness.
Oh, thank you. I like it.
That's terrible, Rich.
No, I'm an Arizona Wildcat. So, that was kind of, live and breathe during March Madness. And then what I love about it, my wife, who does not follow any sports at all, you'll see her, like she has her brackets during March Madness.
That's
right?
true. People do have their brackets.
Yeah. And she's talking to my boys, like this is how she's engaging with our sons because they all have their brackets and they're talking. And, I have my oldest is a geeky stat kid. And, and so he'll talk about stats that I can't even imagine, but it's the way to keep dialogue. And when you see in the office, folks, the brackets that you have. So it's pretty cool on that, but Super Bowl, you can't beat the Super Bowl party, right? Here is the event and this is why we always say it's the Super Bowl, whatever it is, the Super Bowl of X. You don't hear it's March Madness of X. It's the Super Bowl, whatever that is. So it's the big deal. It's where we all come together as a community, as a nation, and have fun, whether it's watching our teams win, lose, or whatever the incredible halftime show is.
This is so nonsensical, but can we do an episode once where we all have the avatars and actually videotape that and put that out as a video recorded?
I wouldn't even know how to do it.
Listen, Rich, I don't think we can figure that out today. Okay.
I don't know how to do that either. I would have to get some lessons on that.
Yeah.
But that would be great.
Rich, you have done so much in the volunteer conservation consultant side. And I think a lot had to do with your upbringing and the impact that Parks and Rec had on your father and secondhand, what it had on you and your family as well. But what is it like? We don't get a lot of volunteer board members on this thing. So what's it like to serve an industry full of people like us who are passionate about this thing? And, sometimes you're trying to harness us or make sure we're in the right direction, or you're trying to capture maybe the energy that we have for something. What's that like?
I actually would say it's a growth period, right? And so and this is for all the Parks Board members, whatever it's 5 or 5,000 that are listening right now. You're in there because you originally start off like I'm the local park adopter, right? That's my thing. I mean, that's usually what the typical thing is, right? Somebody has a local park and they've talked to a council member, they've submitted it, and they have this micro viewpoint of Parks and Rec. Our challenge within the industry is how quickly can we get them to have a systems viewpoint, right? If we can get them to have a systems viewpoint, we're actually able to impact community health and wellness at a much quicker pace. And it also, let's face it, the burnout with some of the staff members who have to go through this education period. So that first 2 years, you're kind of learning and you're trying to figuring it out. And I had the opportunity to be the mayor's appointment, so serving at large, and my wife says I'm extra. So I do spend a lot of time and I am extra. So I will put in the work, and for my board service, I've always been kind of like that classroom time, 3 hours of prep for every 1 hour of meeting. And so I will go around into all the different parks and see what's on the agenda. And I know I'm alone for the most part on that. And so what you're trying to do is get everybody up to speed as quickly as possible. And in the first 2 years, I found myself trying to get to learn y'all's language more. I knew it. At that time, I was already have served on the Austin Parks Foundation board. I was also on the Tree Folks board, which is a reforestation group here in a very large one in Central Texas, about 16 FTEs that are part of it. But you're still learning the inside language and what the importance of active and passive recreation. And, when we're looking at community wellness and the importance of, or we'll say the impact of highest hands, loudest voices, right? Because the highest hands, loudest voices doesn't necessarily impact your community wellness, because we're listening to the same folks who already have the trails and have the pickleball courts. And it's just, a lot of times it's just more, but they still have the ones that they're utilizing. And then so the voices that get quieted are the ones that, are not really having their opportunity for recreation that's meaningful for them. So kind of really learning that in that systems view, learning about the challenges on aquatics. But then you go into a more like knowledge base. If you spend the time in that third and fourth year, then you're getting frustrated with staff. You're trying to be friends with staff the first 2 years, and they're trying to be nice and bring you along and trying to educate you. And then the third and fourth year, like, but I want to try to do this. And I will say that I love, I'm attached to Austin Parks and Recreation and a lot of the leadership there. And we had some arguments, one of the leaders, within the organization. And we're probably both right at different points in time. But then you realize the other challenges that you all have. And this is so completely real. And I say this also for the staff that are working under you all who are in leadership positions. You have so many bosses, right? You have council, you have your management, whether it's strong mayor or if it's a city management form of government. And then you have the need of saying we've got to have interdepartmental collaboration, and then that's meetings. And then you have your neighborhood stakeholders, and that's meetings. And then you have the other community partnership, and that's additional meetings. And they say, why haven't you got all the work done?
Yeah.
Right. And that's real. And so when the community vocalizes their frustration, you're at this point in my life, it's been like locally, here's what they're really dealing with. And, here's how you can make their life easier. And here's how you can get your information quicker. And here's how you can make impact faster. And at the end of the day, what we're really all trying to do is leverage what I always say, network and knowledge to make the greatest impact that we can to really support the stewardship that we have for our communities. I've talked way too much.
No, that's good.
Hope you cut most of that out.
No, that's good. And I think the guys will, I love to hear. I think it's okay for your Parks Board members to disagree with something you're doing, as long as you're having educational conversations about it and you're supportive in the end of both of y'all are trying. I would hope both are in good natured in the sense that they're trying to find the best thing for that community. They may just disagree on what they think that is. It looks like Jay has something on that.
Well, and I liked what you said about you have so many bosses, because I think like we understand that in leadership positions, but I think people that are listening to this that might be in more of a frontline position or in a programming position or, in their first supervisory role, they don't look at it that way, or they may not look at it that way. because they're not interacting with elected officials or city managers or city leadership or the park board. And I think it's important for people to think like that, because it's true. Like we are serving so many people, including the residents, obviously at the first forefront of that. But, and I didn't think about that when I was early in my career. I wasn't, worried about what the elected officials were talking about or what city manager was, because I'm a program where I have one supervisor at the time, and that's where my mindset was. So I think that perspective is really important.
Yeah, and I think it's okay for leadership to share with staff. There's a big leader here, in the Parks and Rec space. I'm not going to share his name because I haven't run this by him, but he's a national leader. And when he was coming on, and my advice to him was, talk to your second tier leadership, who could be really sometimes frustrated with even the decisions, the assistant directors and your program managers, and even and down the organizational ladder, that can be frustrated with the decisions that you have to make, and let them know that you are a Parks and Rec person, but at the end of the day, you respond to somebody, and all anybody can do to their bosses, right, is give them all the information that you have as a data point to help inform them. If you withhold the information, maybe that's a different issue. But if you're giving all that information and it's the city manager's call because they're looking at this other, another picture, a wider lens, then, that's how it is. And you got to execute as the director.
Yeah. Rich, I'd like to ask you a little bit about what we were talking about here with the relationship that goes along with being a professional and then having an advisory board, or having, in our case, we call them commissioners. And so, all pretty much the same concept. I could assume most individuals out there can relate. When we were in Wisconsin, I was part of a session that was talking about elected officials. And some of the conversation that came up after the session was, well, what do you do when that one elected official you can't turn over the leaf because for whatever reason, they just have different priorities. And we talked through that. We didn't talk about, though, was your advisory boards. And the advisory board, for I think what we all tend to understand is that they're there to support you and advocate for what you all are doing. That doesn't mean you're always going to get along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what would be some advice you have for the professionals out there that run into those? You said it's okay to argue. It's okay to disagree. Argue might not be the right word, but it's okay to disagree and have a dialogue to get it right. How would you manage that or what would you recommend to a professional who's maybe feeling like they're struggling with that at this point?
And it's so exhausting because you're dreading that monthly meeting.
Yeah.
Right. You're going into the battlefield, pretty much. And that's what I say, that's really what it feels like. Let's start from the beginning, before that appointment is ever made. Some people are coming right into their board. They've been hired as a new director and then they got the board that they're going to get. Other times it could be like a park district in Illinois or elsewhere where it's elected. But if it's an appointed position, the appointed position is often the council member will ask, like, what are you lacking? And it may be, and if it's not that, it all depends upon your city manager, city administrator, like what sort of conversations you can have with council. But I think a good council member is going to ask, what are you missing on your board? What's that position that looks like? And I think, and it's really wise to make sure that gets known publicly. What sort of position that would be really helpful to do the board's business. So whether it's an advisory role or if it's more is a governance role. And the sort of personalities, often here's how it happens. There is a donor, there is a loud voice within the community, and that council member is trying to say, okay, you deal with it then. And I'll admit, I've been all of them. I've served on more than 25 boards, commissions, task force, committees, and it's different. I've gotten on different ways, but it has been that. I would say take the step back and let's get somebody really good, and let's talk about what's priority for the council member. And sometimes you're just carrying water. I just got off the bond committee for City of Austin, and I was carrying the council members' water on that. And so we were in agreement that this was the pail that I would carry. So you go in as in this case, as a park and rec champion. This person's really committed to parks and recreation. And so fortunately, have developed that reputation. And so I was put on there. But you want to make sure you have a good appointment. And now you're coming in, you're coming into a situation where you have somebody, and I had a really tough board. There's 2 years, it was the toughest board. It was, if you're all familiar with NIMBY and YIMBY, not in my backyard and yes in my backyard, as far as policy positions. And so in this case, I personally will say that we had a whole bunch of NIMBYs on it, and it was very protectivism, and this is my park, this is my neighborhood, and anything that limits active and passive recreation that I don't like, and that my committee members or my community members, that we have this neighborhood association, and we're usually all of us a certain race, ethnicity, gender, and age. And so, and this is what we want to see. And I say that all in broad, because you can be in a Hispanic part of town and have this exact same thing. In this case, it was, more of an Anglo part of town. And so it was like, if you're not one of us, we don't want you there. And they create those positions. So it's extraordinarily hard. And in this case, I know when I resigned after 7.5 years on the Parks Board, I had wrote a letter to council, to the Parks Board members, and to staff, or copying staff, and saying how toxic it was. And it was purposeful. I was getting ready to come to my end of my term. So, I can only do 8 years. And so I was like, let me get this statement out. But I had already had relationships on council and trying to get them to appoint bigger thinkers. And they weren't listening. Now, the good news is
sometimes they appoint the loudest people, not the biggest thinkers, right? Yeah.
Right. No, it was definitely the loudest, the easiest, because they love Parks and Rec. But, it's like, is it really? I'm like, it's land use. You absolutely need to pay attention to land use. Right. And so they learned the lesson, and they got a great board in there now. They made some really quick changes. And, and sometimes, for the leader, for the Parks Board member who may be listening, and you find yourself in this position, I mean, sometimes you have to be the sacrificial lamb in order to do what you wanted to do, which is stewardship for the community. Now, going back to the question, there has to be the education, right? There has to be the education in trying to get them to have that systems viewpoint. And the more education that you can do, and hopefully it will, and it's helping giving the messaging back, because usually if they're really dug in, it's probably there's some people behind them helping them dig that hole. So having the language back and why we're not doing something, why it's really important, and even the individual tours, I think does pay dividends. And then, of course, we always want to be an active listener and empathy, because even though when we think we have all the right answers, there's sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden, that's a really good perspective. I just really been kind of closed off, and let's incorporate that. And that's all you can do, Tom, and for anybody, we know there's a parks director out there. We know there's assistant directors out there who are really kind of struggling, and they're not liking their job because of their advisory board. Have your North Star. Stick with your North Star. Why are you doing this? Keep following your North Star, and you'll get past this interesting chapter in your career.
We'll be right back.
Hey, listener, is it time to DTR this relationship and make you a sponsor? I don't even know what the hell that means, but I do know that each episode of RecLess averages over 500 listeners. That's 500 potential ears attached to agencies that you could influence or reach. Over all of our social media and listening platforms, we have over 2,200 subscribers, and it's growing. This spot right here could be yours. Not only would you reach the Parks and Rec masses, but your contribution goes directly to supporting Parks and Rec professionals in the field through scholarships for professional development. Contact us at reclesspod@gmail.com or check us out at reclesspod.com for more details. Okay, now back to the show.
I like that. I really appreciate that answer. And Jay, go ahead. I think you might be going in a similar direction.
Well, I was just going to add, I agree with that. Stay with your North Star and can keep thinking of your why, why you're in the role you're in, why you do what you do. I remember I had an elected official in a previous position, previous city, that like there was no chance of him ever voting yes for anything that we brought to the table. There was always a no, and never even really a lot of dialogue back and forth on why. And I made it a goal of mine to, try to get a yes one time, and I did, and it was like the greatest achievement ever, even though it was super minor.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I think the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, that one no really doesn't matter because we still had overwhelming positivity. But I think for a while it took me, maybe months, maybe longer to learn that because it did bother me and it did kind of, make me want to think twice about how we're approaching things. And
It
wasn't
feels
necessarily
personal too, a little bit.
100%, 100%. And I think, like I said earlier, I mean, this was, 10, 12 years ago, and your skin's a lot thicker the longer you're in the field. So that has changed for sure. But I just love what you said. Staying with North Star, stay positive, and that's always going to happen. There's always going to be some sort of road bump, but that can't deter you from your trek.
Now, Jay, what was your relationship with your board chair at that moment? And how were they interacting with this one? Was it council?
It was council, yes.
Okay. So what was your relationship with the mayor, or if you had a council president?
So my relationship was great. And I will say my relationship with all of the elected officials, except for that one, was great, but it wasn't me. Like it wasn't my relationship. That person was just very negative in general.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that they were just against Park and Rec. They were against several departments and several initiatives that were part of the strategic plan for the city as a whole. So, and that was also an eye-opening thing. It's like, okay, it's not personal. It's not Park and Rec. It was, they don't want growth. They don't want development. They don't see where the city is going, even though everyone else pretty much did see it and got on board with it. But this one person just stuck to their foundation of it, which is fine. I respect that. There's nothing, that I could have probably done different because it had nothing to do with just parks. It was just the direction the city was going at the time.
I feel it's easier when it is council, frankly, because if you know who your people are, and you all know who your people are on council, right? And so, and at the end of the day, just what you say, and for the person who's struggling through this right now, they'll be just, as long as you're informing the group that has Parks and Recs back, let the votes fall where they are. I have no problem, even on the leadership, like my board service, calling for the vote. Just call the question and let's take the vote. And then hopefully you do have a dialogue, right? You want healthy dialogue, you want healthy members. And afterwards, when somebody loses a vote, that they're still part of the team. And, really appreciate the input that you all had. Really gave us a lot to think about. How do we do the incorporation? Usually what's submitted, a lot of it's fiscal that we see. And so, we want to make sure that we leverage, we're good stewards of, and this is something we all care about. We want to be good stewards of the limited taxpayer dollars that we have and, be able to come with that messaging back. And do you have any other recommendations? And that kind of that wrap around where you're kind of slowly maybe bringing them in the system, or at least they're less hostile. They can still be the fiscal conservative because that's what they're elected for,
You've mentioned park districts a little bit. I heard you say that earlier, and you've talked about some of the legislative caps or constraints that a municipality goes through. I think it's something that's very interesting. I think the guys would be interesting to hear. With what's going on with our Texas legislation, some of the park and rec professionals in Texas are starting to look at what a park district would look like. And I wouldn't say we have large-scale buy-in even in our industry yet, nor less with elected officials and city management offices. But it's one of those things that we all believe it'll probably be an 8, 10, 12-year process that will happen potentially after most of us are even retired. But the conversation, you got to plant the tree today for the shade that someone will appreciate later, right? And so we're starting to go through the process of what it would look like to introduce park districts. Where could they be introduced? Where's that an option in Texas? And I've been an active participant in these conversations, and I'm very pro for it in a lot of ways. But I would love to hear just an elevator speech of this, because you could go on this one for 2 hours alone on the benefits of potentially separating Parks and Rec and quality of life components from a general fund budget that maybe in the next 10 or 15 years needs to be more public safety, public works, infrastructure driven, and let this other taxing opportunity provide the quality of life component, and those two not have to fight each other at every budgetary council meeting.
Yeah. So trying to keep, that 2 hour to 2 minutes is.
We'll give you 3 minutes.
We have a funding issue in Texas. Yeah. That's the headline, and and some of it's maybe it's earned to some degree, right? We had city municipal budgets being capped at 8% every year. That's how they can grow without going up for a tax rate election. And so the legislature then swung the pendulum, personally, I think too far the other way, and it's capped at 3.5%. Well, when you take into account labor contracts, gas,
inflation,
energy, regular inflation, your consumer price index,
insurances,
the insurance for sure. All of a sudden, and then the mandates. We have mandates on public safety here in Texas, and so if your labor contract is saying, hey, we're going to go up 6%, 5.5% for the year on raises for public safety, and 2% for everybody else, and you should kind of augmenting that, but you're capped at 3.5%. At some point, you're eating yourself, right? And who gets eaten are a lot of times the services, the core services that the citizens actually care about. Parks and Recreation is being front of mind of that, and so we're seeing this issue where we're not maintaining the things that we have, and to the degree which the citizens want us to maintain them, because we don't have we're having to shrink down our maintenance and operation budgets. We're not able to put every kid, the kids, and have the opportunity for summer schools, and putting that burden on the parents for private summer camps, rather than what we do a fantastic job. Nobody's ever going to say my municipality sucks at summer camps. This is our Super Bowl, on summer camp. So, but when we get that reduced funding on programming, it's cutting seats. So we are looking at it. Here's what we're cognizant of. Whether you look at NRPA's data or Trust for Public Lands data or the Kinder study back in probably about a decade ago, people believe in Parks and Recreation. The more, and what you'll see on voter data, like bond referendum, and I've done this heat analysis. So if you really want to make sure that Parks bond passes, have projects close by to everybody, so they know where they're going, where that investment's close. They drive by it, they go to it, and they see it, and then they're willing to make that big investment in Parks and Rec because they're going to benefit it. Anything, and I've had the pleasure or the pain of serving on 3 bond committees. And, the further away you are out from a capital project, the less votes you're going to get for that project. But what we know, going back to it, we see this with Minneapolis. We see this in Seattle. We see this, whether it's in Northbrook Parks District in Illinois, who really invests in Parks and Rec. Not only do you double, triple, in Northbrook's almost, quadruple, but I will say triple the spend, because they get the benefit. And people don't care. It's not a partisan issue. They don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It's a quality of life value that you have for your communities. So we're counting on, if you separate or you create this additional spend and you separate just Parks and Rec out, that people will want to invest in their community. They'll want to invest in their families. And more importantly, we want to make sure that we give them an opportunity to vote on their values. And that's really what it looks like. So we're playing around and giving trying to come up with a framework where it gives communities the flexibility. It's super important, right? The whole goal is every community, one size doesn't fit all. And so if all of a sudden you just want, a dedicated, your own elected board, that you have that option that you can do. If you want it where it's ex officio of the council, if you want it where it's the council adjourns and calls, and they're the governing body and calls the other, which is a Seattle model, and creating a framework that allows communities to have these options. And it doesn't matter where it's at within Texas. I went over 3 minutes. Sorry, Shane.
It's pretty close, though. I was pretty proud of you.
Right.
Well, I think it's fascinating because Parks and Rec is this really unique thing. I always say it's the thumb of government. It's not one of the fingers. It's kind of the thumb. It is a little awkward. It's a little different, but it also makes your grip whole in a lot of ways, right? And so that's how I always explain it to council. Like, you can live a thumbless life, but it makes things difficult. And I think that's what you see in counties, or sometimes you see that in areas where, rural areas where you have public safety and you have public works and you have some sort of administration, and then you have that other thing, finance /IT/HR, whatever. And I think Parks and Rec can get caught in this swirl of, are we more important than public safety? A lot of times, a lot of people would say, no, you want to invest in fire and police, right? And then you'll also get the folks that hate in some capacity this term of bureaucratic bloat or government bloat. And that isn't Parks and Rec. When they're saying that, they're not saying, man, we have too many guys mowing. What they're saying is, do we need 12 HR people? Can we do it with 5? Do we need 18 IT guys? Can you do it with 3? And so these internal departments do grow as a city grows. And so they see that bloat and they see this public safety, public works thing. And in the mouths all getting fed, they get frustrated with us in all of it. But it reminds me of what Joe Turner said, season 1, parks are a green issue. They're not a red or blue issue. And I think he said red or blue makes green in parks or whatever he said. But it's one of those things where I do believe in the most fiscally conservative and maybe the most liberally fiscal counties in Texas, if they could take the idea of parks out. And this is you're just making sure your 10 or your 12 or your 15 parks, your trails, your couple public pools are being funded fully, and they're not competing with this other side of government. I think a lot of Texans, even in a mostly conservative state, would support that. And I think our bonds show that in a lot of ways, that we do get a lot of bond programs, both in more conservative parts of the state and in less conservative parts of the state. They continue to do park improvements. We just need to pull that out in some capacity to also now fund it fully with our operations and maintenance through some sort of park district.
Yep. It's smart decisions and you're creating value. I think at the end of the day, everybody appreciates the value that you're creating. And then, of course, that value is really what's in it for, me, my family, my neighborhood, my community. And I think that's really the focus and the care. And we see, great, your listeners from Ohio, right? And your listeners from Florida, they're doing some really cool stuff. Florida's doing some really cool stuff right now. Ohio has some really good structures going. And so these are, some really great roadmaps for us to follow here in Texas. But this is not just going to be a Texas issue. I think this is an issue that we have everywhere. We have areas that grow, and we need to make sure that we are accommodating that growth. And we're, I would say all types of funding from all types of funds, and whatever we need, bring everything in. I love partnerships. In order to do that, I love improvement districts. Philanthropy is fantastic. And whether it's in renovations, their energy savings performance contract, you have to be creative in order to make sure that we're delivering the services that are really going to keep our communities and communities healthy. It's really it.
Not necessarily to just continue on that same path, but please feel free to include that in the question I'm about to ask. With your new position, where do you feel that you fall? And this is probably going to sound like an interview again, but what are your top priorities coming into this position, and how you can shape the profession in the field?
I appreciate it. And it's always this little tread, like a kind of treading lightly a little bit. Do I have a vision, Rich DePalma? Yes, I definitely have a vision. Do I respect governance and making sure that my board is the one who leads the direction and I do the implementation? 110%, right? So my challenge, similar to y'all's challenges, is how do I make sure that I'm informing the board with all the different options and data and giving them the best informed choice when they make the call. And then for me to do the implementation with the team. So that's the high level. Some of the things that I observe without, so for those who are tuning in, it's like, I think the announcement comes out July 20th. It's when we'll announce it. Maybe we'll move it to July 17th, that this is when this episode hits. But I'll be I'm asking for a 10 business day quiet period.
It's a 10 business day head start. It must be in there before no one knows.
I like that.
Yeah, it really,
That's cool.
This position has gone unfilled since end of January. And, staff is going to be what I believe would be anxious. I would be a new leader coming in. And so I want to spend some time with them. But the biggest thing is and I think that we'll see how this plays out. But I'll be providing through our board president, a nice letter. I really want to kind of calm, stresses down. But then I have information that I want them to start working on now and compiling. I do not want. There's no time to waste. And, I want to be able to be there on July 6th, of course, having the conversation with them. Hopefully I'll have some of the data beforehand so I can look at it, starting July 1. But, what's our condition, where we're at as an organization, and where are our memberships at? Where is our membership? Where has our membership died down, if anywhere? Where are we lacking? I just had a great conference with my friends over at Texas City Managers Association, and they have gaps in their membership, and it seems like it may be the same gaps where we have. And so coming up with that strategy there, and then what we know is we need to be an inclusive tent and park and recreation. We care about community wellness, right? Whether that is social, mental, physical, ecological, we care about the wellness of our communities, and that's why we do what we do. Or why y'all do what you do. And so, who else is doing this in this space? In Texas, we have municipal utility districts. We have public improvement districts. We have municipal management districts. We have, we have conservancies who are phenomenal, like you all have, and foundations that are doing the work. And so we want to make sure that everybody feels included within our ecosystem, that they have a place here. And then one of the things that we really hadn't been doing a good job about, and others like IAPD, of course, now they're elected commissioners, does a fantastic job about, is bringing in park board members. So doing it in a way where protects staff's and I'll say sacred time during the week to be with their cohorts, get their mentorship, get their knowledge without a staff member breathing down, what will feel like bringing down their back. And so you protect that during the week. And then, on Friday, the park board members are coming in. You have some shared presentations. You have the awards dinner for your parks board members. And then Saturday, they're full on we're educating them up. We're trying to get them caught up to where we're at. So you have more, at least you have it's not going to be everybody, but at least you'll have some champions. You'll have some folks you'll be able to go ahead and lean over that people have trusted because of their knowledge base, and be able to move the agenda a lot quicker for the departments. So that's kind of some immediate. And then I suspect, but I don't know this. This is what we'll see. I suspect is there are locations that they don't feel the connection maybe to traps. They see an Austin area organization. And so maybe in the future we're decentralizing, our staff members. And so maybe they don't really necessarily just see it as Austin, but maybe we have somebody over in West Texas, maybe somebody's in Midland, maybe somebody's in Abilene, maybe we have somebody in the Rio Grande Valley, that's supporting it, becomes the main team, and we're coming together and working like we're doing right now, virtually coming together at the events and having it leveraging when we're doing these regional conferences, and coming in the extra day early to come together in person as a team. So we'll look at that. And then, I want to make sure that we're not ignoring everybody in the profession. I think there's some folks within the departments, maybe procurement, maybe contracts, kind of like the low level, but as far as not low level, that's terrible. Yeah, send your emails to Shane. But maybe it's also the forester, maybe it's somebody who's on land acquisition, and we're not creating the program for them. And then maybe we want to look at certifications. Maybe we're saying, hey, we need to have some sort of additional industry standard And there's some folks that Dr. Ali Thomas is really a big mover on rehabilitative recreation and getting, the accreditation here in Texas. But maybe there's some other things that we need to be looking at too. But why tent, right? And so for anybody on the private sector side, or if you're a parks director in Texas or a staff member in Texas and you're working with anybody in the private sector and who wants to do work with Parks and Rec or is doing work in Park and Rec, I'll say, we welcome the partnership. We'll find a way to work together. It's going to be incredible, and I'm really looking forward to the work ahead.
Well, that sounds exciting. I'm excited for you. I am a little nervous for you because, before Jay hops in, you had talked about all of your experience serving on these types of boards, and now wonderful, wonderful answer of 110% being responsive to your board. I think you might have a difficult board member in present company right now. And so I just wish you the best on that front.
Appreciate that, Tom.
Yeah, Shane, Jeff is a pain in the ass. You're right.
Present company.
Oh, my bad.
It's a great brain trust. And, one of the things we know, Shane is one of the most creative folks that were around, and he's asked some hard questions, and so and they're really good questions, But so I'm not saying this because Shane was one of the board members who voted for me, but it was I've respected Shane for a long time because of his creativity, and he has a bit of a rough Viking exterior. But the reality is a guy who is extraordinarily creative and very systems thinking. And I think that's really where we drive together as a board and ED. I think we are really looking at the system and how we can improve the systems. And so I think there's going to be a lot of great synergy.
Well, I didn't say that for you to set Shane up with such a nice compliment.
So love this.
I did catch in the middle, though, a little bit of the sandwich technique. Very innovative and creative, but he's going to be asking me some pain in the questions.
Totally. And everybody should. I mean,
yes.
It's my goal is really, again, just providing information and data and perspective, and then the vote goes where it goes on those sort of questions that involve the board. Not everything will involve the board, and so but my job is absolutely implement the strategic plan, and I'll implement the approved budget, and so I'm looking forward to that, and I feel very comfortable.
Great.
You mentioned earlier your love and all the work you've done with Austin, and obviously this role is completely different because you're looking statewide, and this is kind of not an interesting question, but it's a little unique. I'm just curious, like, what characteristics or what traits do you need to bring to the table that is looking at things through the statewide lens and not just one area, one graphic of part of the area that you currently live in or reside and helped out, but just what's going to change from your approach when you're looking at it statewide versus individualized areas?
It's a really good question.
That's a great question, Jay. Hopefully I've already had one. So fortunately I came before being vice president with FGM Architects, which is a phenomenal group here, and been very supportive of the bad news that I've given them this week. But I used to be with a firm called Strategic Partnerships, which is a statewide consulting firm, particularly to the public sector. And so I have relationships in Midland. And so although, Union City is where my dad had served when I was growing up and board in the waiting for him to get done with the Parks Board meeting, not knowing this is the legacy. We were both born in Wichita Falls, Texas. And so, I got roots in Wichita Falls. He passed away in O'Brien, Texas, in Knox City. He was Republican county chair. So on the politics side, I definitely understand a lot of his perspective. And then, relationships throughout the state, feel very comfortable. I got my boots, I got my jeans. They're authentic. They're worn out. They're not just for show. And so, we'll be going around the state and having these conversations and really creating that value and finding out what that value is. So, when you're listening, if you're over in Odessa or if you're, I don't care, wherever in the state and you don't think Parks and Rec in particular traps is for you, I invite you to give me a call. We're going to create real value. I think there's real value already there. But whether it's coming from templates and how to stand up particular events within your community, whether it's help understanding additional funding options within your community, or if it is a parks director search, or you just need somebody within your area, which we know is so important, is that cohort, right? Your cohort, like Tom and Jay and Shane, you all come together somehow. And there's a story there, which I'm not. I missed that episode where it must have been episode 1. But
it was jail. We all found ourselves in jail one time together, and said, "Well, let's do a podcast."
Yeah, so you have these cohorts, whether it's jail or whatever, but that you've led together somehow. But we want everybody. We want them to find that person that they can call when they're struggling and for the advice, and that's really what TRAPS shines at, and all the state associations shine at, and we want to encourage that, because that gives a healthier staff member, and also accelerates that professional growth that we benefit in our communities.
So because we got a hard cap, I think we're fixing to go to rapid, but I got one more question quick before we get there. You're close with a good friend of ours as well, Christine Stratton, and you work with an RPA on things. And I'm sure you're obviously a fan of the model and the impact that an RPA has on our industry at a national level. TRAPS is going to have to work with an RPA. It's also going to have to do its own thing sometimes. I imagine they won't always be aligned every single time and everything. Do you have any thoughts or concerns or fears on how TRAPS will work with, or how you work with another state, how you work with an RPA, the greater good versus, focusing on Texas in some capacity?
Yeah, one of the things is I think Christine's phenomenal. I'm definitely a fanboy, and with an NRPA altogether, everybody's first NRPA is like going to Disneyland, right? It's just absolutely a gift. Ideally, it's a continuum of services that you have. Yeah, continuum of services that you're having at the state level going to the national. For me, it would be ideal that the look and feel that our members here in Texas have when they navigate the website for data, for information, for registration on events, it feels very familiar, because they're doing the same thing at NRPA, and vice versa, that they go to NRPA and they're able to navigate that. So we're talking at a really, really early, and it's probably even too early for me to say, but this is the one thing I will say. There's 2 things we're working on. One I absolutely cannot say, but the other one is talking about a technology consortium. The tech consortium, where all of a sudden we're looking at the technology stack that NRPA is using, and they have this wonderful economies of scale, and they have fantastic technology, and Court Jones was just out looking at new technology in order to make the member experience better. And so let's leverage that, because CHOPS, we might not be able to afford it. In Massachusetts, might be able to afford it. New Mexico. And so it'd be even better if we can get economies of scale as more members coming from the states are leveraging that license, that they get a benefit too, like a cheaper license. But this is how we can create that opportunity. And then I've already started working on looking at the awards for our awards committee. And we have some opportunities. And so when you look at what NRPA is doing, and IAPD and IPIRA, and I think I have about 15 of the state associations. So it'd be really nice where it becomes, this parallel on these type of awards, and how we get recognized, and at the cities levels, that, the population level that we're making awards at. And that's an important one. We want to recognize our peers. And for me, it's a little selfish, because I know if there's more people being awarded and there's more people who are nominated, then I'm going to have more butts and seats at the conference. So.
Well, that was great. I appreciate that. We're going to go on to rapid fire here, and your year one's going to be busy. You're already feeling a little behind on TRAP state planning and where we're at with our rodeos and all the things that we do at a state level. But on top of that, we're now just a year and a couple months out from hosting the next NRPA. So not Phillies, but I believe we're the year after Phillies, correct? Isn't Houston the next year? And so
Yeah.
And Traps will be heavily involved with that, or has been in the past. And so, you're year one, not only you're standing up a state conference, but you're also part of the integral infrastructure of the national conference in some capacity. What do you do to make Houston not feel like it was an afterthought, or it was just this plug in because something else happened with the other scheduling?
It's a great question. And honestly, I have not thought about NRPA in Houston yet. So that's just the honest answer. Fortunately, in my current role, I am at between 11 and 13 conferences a year. Mm-hmm. And as such, I know, and some of them are national, some of them are international, and some of them are state. I've been to I conference in Houston about 3 times a year. I know where the cool place to go is and what to do. And there's some great examples, some of the other conferences. But at the end of the day, we'll be working closely. Traps will be working closely with NRPA to make sure it's a fantastic experience for everybody who's coming. That I can absolutely guarantee. People will, and Houston's phenomenal. So come to Houston, you're going to love it. We're going to make sure you have the best experience at any location that you're going to have. I'm sorry, Philly. Philly's great. I love Philadelphia too, and I'm looking forward to it. But
he's not even the ED. He already nailed it with his little ED response. Look at that.
Yeah, well, it's true. We have a lot of pride in Texas, and there's a lot of great things. And I will say that we're going to have so many great experiences, and there's so many wonderful things that Houston has done in through funding its park space, in particular its linear park systems. But their forestry and just so many great examples. What's also cool though, if you're a foodie, New York City and Houston are, to me, I'm a foodie, and they're the 2 best food locations in the U.S. And you can challenge me on it. If you like diverse food, and just some great food altogether, you're going to eat so well in Houston. So join me for a meal, and we'll get after it in 2027.
You sold me on foodie, and you sold me before that. What you had, your answer to that question was, as Shane mentioned, was pretty spot on. I mean, that's some good PR. And I'll tell you that Houston, the Dallas conference was pretty good too. Houston's was one of my favorites out of all of them so to go back again, I got a chance to visit Houston outside of the conference. So it's one of those locations I've at least been to a few times, and I don't disagree. And I don't have even nearly enough experience that it is probably one of the best food cities I've ever had the experience or the pleasure of being to in 2 different. And Shane, you showed me the other individuals we visited showed me a lot. So I hope that this RecLess podcast appearance can get us a little VIP.
That's right.
Action.
We'll make sure of it
while
Tom.
We're in Houston.
Hey, let me ask you real quick, Tom. What did you love about Houston? When you said you had it was a great conference experience? What are the things that quickly stand out to you?
I drove him around the whole time. That's what he loved. He didn't Uber $1.
He drove me around everywhere, so I had a chauffeur. No, but I mean, hey, you know what? Right at the top of that list is the food, and that was so. Shane showed us a few different. I think I got introduced to kolaches during that conference.
Yep.
Obviously the barbecue in
great Tex-Mex.
Yep, some great Tex-Mex. We literally, we went somewhere every day that was it was all different every time. And you mentioned, I loved your analogy of the first NRPA conference being like going to Disneyland, or in my case, Disney World. Mm-hmm. That's why we go to Disney World, is because I just love the variety of foods too. I mean, we love it for a lot of different reasons, but that's the cherry on top for me, is that you can get pretty much a little bit of everything. So. The food was one of them, but the city was vibrant. It's so alive. You felt there's different feels at these NRPA conferences when you go to the cities, and Orlando is amazing. I love Orlando. I love it because of the touristy feel. However, you're not getting that city feel in Orlando. Yeah. And I feel that in Philadelphia, and I've only had the pleasure to be in Philadelphia at short spurts. Philadelphia has been voted a most walkable city, and so Philadelphia is going to have that lively feel, but it's definitely a little smaller I mean, it's a little smaller than Houston. So it's just a different feel in Houston. There's not many cities. I mean, quite frankly, there are not many cities in the world like Houston.
Yeah, I mean, just for those who are like, oh yeah, Texas. Well, I already have my Tex-Mex and my, barbecue. Man, Houston has Vietnamese and
Yeah, the
Thai,
Asian food. Yep.
Persian. I mean, it just goes on, and it's phenomenal. My favorite Persian restaurant is in Houston. My wife is East Indian. There's great East Indian restaurants there.
Great Greek food. Great food.
Lebanese, Turkish. It's just phenomenal. So I'm getting hungry now.
Yeah, me too.
But we'll do it, and we'll have some tables available. There's going to be somebody who's going to go to that conference is by themselves the first time. They're like, oh my God, we'll make, I guarantee it, with NRPA, and they have a really great, little networking event that they do. We're going to make sure that nobody's eating alone. You're always going to have a place to go sit at, and it's just going to be a phenomenal time when we get back to Houston. And then on Philadelphia, one last thing for me to say there. I do have a session that I'm doing with Austin Parks as well as Philadelphia, and then hopefully Chicago Parks District. If you all are listening, kind of hard to get to the right person there, but it's on concessions and the important way concessions add for the community programming and how it can be leveraged to be able to supplement CIP. And we're going to be walking. So we have a session relating to contracts and concessions. And we'll likely on that Sunday before NRPA starts, do a nice little walk along Benjamin Franklin Parkway and see starting off at City Hall and going over to the museum and stopping at all of these fantastic concessions and cafes.
You're going to have to go to our social now.
Yeah.
That's right. We can make that a part of the. I don't know if that'll tie in, but hey, I didn't. Rich, I don't even think I actually asked the question. So let me just. This is a quick one. Two-parter.
Quick one. Two-parter.
It's a quick one.
It is. It's quick. It's quick. It'll be a quick answer for Rich, I'm sure.
Some question.
You're all just prolonging it now. Okay. Houston or Austin food? I think you already answered that, but Shane has told me so much about Austin. And then what's the sleeper spot in Texas for food?
Oh, sleeper spot. I think Houston is so underrated nationally on food. It is, to me, it really, I'm a pretty good traveler. I think I've been to most of our major cities and, large cities and small cities in our states and in the international. Houston is just phenomenal. The other small cities, I'll tell you what, I don't know on the food side, but here's some of the cities that I really love in Texas that I love Grapevine. I think Grapevine is just a phenomenal community that I love a lot. Once we get the multi-generational rec center in Pflugerville and what that's going to do, part of that 27 acres, it's going to be phenomenal. I love what that's going to do for that community. They're so lucky, and to the point where once it gets done, I'm even thinking about moving to Pflugerville.
There we go.
So we just have great spots. If you like German food, going out to New Braunfels, of course, is really strong. Lockhart is there's no secret on Lockhart from barbecue and also German food as well.
The Valley's great too. There's some of the best Mexican food you'll ever have down the Valley, and seafood down there too.
Here's the best sleeper. So in Midland, the Mexican restaurant used to be at Jerry Morales' restaurant, and had the opportunity to have lunch with him. I forgot what the names were, but it's easy to find. Everybody knows in Midland. His carne asada is magical. That asada is the best asada that there is. It is phenomenal. I still dream about that, and I had that 15 years ago, or probably 10. So. But we'll look forward to y'all being there and hang out with us in Philadelphia, and reach out relating you want to be part of this park walk. And it's now looks like it'll be the concession and RecLess walk that we'll do. And
let's go.
It's phenomenal. You'll love the experience, and we'll have a good time.
Well, hey, I'll stick with the theme of Houston and not food related, but what is the one other must see visit or item to go do and attend while you're there outside of food?
It's Buffalo Bayou,
Okay.
a linear park system that's leveraged through a Chapter 380 agreement. So it doesn't be big nerdy on the financing of it, but Chapter 380 agreement, I believe, and it's just a really great linear park system. But I love, is it Discovery Green right there, Shane?
Yep, Discovery Green's great.
It has, again, nice little concessions, activation. They have these little they're really smart in how they design the spaces. And so you have wonderful food trucks along all the avenue right there. And so, you have all your choices of this great food. There's a place for the kids right there. There's if you want to go inside and eat indoors, there's multiple restaurants that overlook the park. And then the activation during, Houston games, during their festivals, it's a highly activated space. And I know there's so many people in Houston probably pulling their head out saying there's so much more. And
great museums, great art areas as well.
It's close to, when I was there too, it's close to Galveston. Is that what it's called?
Galveston, yeah.
Yeah. So
I got roots in Galveston.
Waterfront.
Galveston's a cool, definitely a cool little side trip for sure. Easy side trip. And Galveston, I'm really partial to Galveston. My family was there, pretty much until the big disaster in the early 1900s. So, yeah, great stuff.
Rich, this has been great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on with us. And we say all this all the time. We could have gone another hour easy. And we had a hard cap and we're fighting it. We were trying to get all of our punches in and we're still wanting to go. So I really appreciate the time. Congrats on the new position.
Yes,
I'm excited to announce it. Like Rich said, he's going to join the 6 traps. They're going to announce it the 17th. They're basically going to hold out until we post this live. So awesome. It's a really cool opportunity for us.
Yep, absolutely. I appreciate y'all. Look forward to everybody getting involved in traps. Let's see where y'all.
There you go.
Nice to talk, Rich.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Rich.
Best of luck. That's fun.
He nailed the interview when he did it last week, guys. It's like he'd prepared 20 years for it. It makes you feel so good when you go through. It's like, that's exactly who we need. And y'all can see it. A lot of passion too.
Yeah.
Is there really are you really trying to work out the announcement with this episode?
We are going to.
That's cool.
Yeah, he was on the 6th is when he starts. He asked for 2 weeks. I asked him if he could do 2 business days or 10 business days instead. So this will post on his 10th business day. So Traps will should let everyone know Friday that he's our new executive director as we post that he's our new in this episode saying that'll be the title, Rich DePalma, executive director of Traps.
That's cool.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Very exciting.
All right, fellas. Till next time. See ya.
See you next on RecLess, everyone.
See you guys. Here at RecLess, we love to give back to the community that we're so passionate about. We do that by providing scholarships to professionals to attend conferences they may not otherwise be able to attend. That's where you come in, sponsorships. If you are interested in a sponsorship, we'd love to connect with you. So this spot could be yours. Contact us today at recklesspod@gmail.com or check us out at recklesspod.com for more details.
This episode of RecLess wouldn't have been possible without the support of our agencies and our better halves, Melissa Salatino, Lindsay Tryon, and our executive producer, Hannah Mize. We also want to thank our director of hashtags and swag, Rooney Taylor, and our team of junior producers, Luke, James, Elizabeth, Grant, and Harper. Stay up to date on all things RecLess by following all of our social media and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast to ensure you don't miss an episode. See you next time on RecLess.